Welcome to the Kat Kanavos Show, everyone. I am your host, Kat Kanavos. My real name's Kathleen O'Keefe Kanavos, but I hope you'll all call me Kat. I am the co-author of Dreams That Can Save Your Life, written with Dr. Larry Burke of Duke University Medical. And, dreams being researched in medical science and also in behavioral science. And that's what Larry does on his off time. So tonight we have a very interesting guest because she also shared a dream with me, which we'll get to later. But I'd like to introduce you to Connie Bramer. And she was diagnosed in 2008 as one of the many women in her family who are diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you've seen your mother and other family members die from it, gives you a whole different idea of fear. You spend your life looking over your shoulder to see when it's going to happen to you. And that's one of the things that makes her story so different. So welcome to the show, Connie.
Thanks, Kat. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you on the show. It's kind of like a party.
It is a party.
A party of the breast cancer survivors / thrivers, because that's what we are. We are past surviving and we are now into thriving. So Connie, tell our audience a little bit about, how you actually dealt with the fact that breast cancer was already in your family. Tell us how that worked for you.
Well, I always knew that it was in my family. My great grandmother had passed from it. My grandmother at 54, and my mom passed away at 53. And everyone was diagnosed a little bit younger every generation. So I was a little bit shocked. I was always on the lookout for it, and because of my family history, I was being watched very carefully. But I ended up on my just after my 39th birthday, I had a pain in my chest, and people say cancer doesn't hurt. But I had a pain in my chest, kind of by my armpit area, and I was sleeping, and I'm like, why is this hurting? So it just so happened, I kind of believe things happen for a reason, because I'm not a complainer. I would have probably let it go. And my OBGYN appointment, my gynecologic appointment, the yearly visit was 3 days later. And I went, and she said, it's probably nothing, but we'll get a mammogram. And I had just had a mammogram 8 months before, because I kind of monkey around and don't do things on time because I'm busy. And that's something that women talk about all the time. I'm too busy to get a mammogram, too busy to go to the doctor for a checkup. So that was a lesson well learned. So 8 months previously, I'd had a perfectly clean mammogram. So fast forward the 8 months, and it ended up being cancer, and it was diagnosed to me off of an ultrasound.
An ultrasound. So it didn't show up in the mammogram?
No, it did. And then they wanted to do further testing and did it on an ultrasound. And the ultrasound tech was very upset. I write about it in my book, because she was a chatty Cathy doll, and she stopped talking. And I'm like, something is up here. And the doctor came in, goes, 99% sure this is cancer. Maybe I'm the 1%, but it didn't end up that way. Yeah. But it was shocking to me how it had jumped down so much. My mother was diagnosed at 47. So to me, a 7-year age dip was pretty significant. And that's what they're finding in generational cancers. From what I've been reading, that it happens, younger every generation. So it's about 4. So I'm very concerned for my daughter. She's 18. I have not been tested for the gene. And then once I have that done, I'm 99% sure I have it. If I do, then my daughter's going to be tested. My cancer was estrogen driven. So it wouldn't affect my son because it's estrogen driven. But yeah, it was a shock. But it was ironic, because the summer before I was diagnosed, I was looking into having my breast removed.
Interesting.
And, to prevent,
Yeah, like Angelina Jolie.
Exactly. And, and doing some of my research, the insurance companies fight you a little bit.
Oh, they do.
So, yeah, they could have paid $50,000 and had it all done. But after I went through all the antics that I talk about in my book, all the crazy things that happened to me, with a little bit of comedy in there, my treatment probably cost $200,000, if not more, because I've had 13 breast cancer related surgeries and about 5 months of chemo.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is. It's a whole lot, and it's interesting because we have so many parallels in that. I had my mammogram just a few months before I went in, and I started having my dreams that I talk about in my book, where I had these monks coming in, and the doctors kept saying, you just had a mammogram. It was healthy. Go home. And it turned out I had them to do exploratory surgery in stage 2. But what they are finding out is that women, where it runs in the family, and that's what we'll get to in a minute, it's showing up 15 years earlier. So when I was going through my treatments, Connie, mothers were bringing their daughters into the radiation room for treatment, and the daughters were getting the treatment. I was shocked at that. I was utterly shocked. And I did the BRCA test. I don't carry the gene, yet I had breast cancer 3 times. So
riddle me the math on that, I don't know how that happens.
And for our live audience, I have to tell you, Connie's sense of humor in that book is hysterical. From the very first paragraph where she's talking about it's a normal day, and she's just a hamster running on her hamster wheel, and all of a sudden she misses a step as a hamster, and I was falling out of my chair right off the bat. I mean, one of the things I loved about your book was your sense of humor. Connie, you were never
Well, I really think that what you think about, you bring about. And when you're going through any difficult time in your life, especially cancer, and I have both been in those shoes, it's important to see the bright side. And normally I try to see the funny in everything. I'm always cracking up about things, usually at myself. But it was important for me to, be me and make light of it. And, the one big difference in my family was my mom was very tight-lipped about her cancer. She didn't talk about it. It was kind of like pink elephant in the room. And I decided that when I was diagnosed, I felt that I wanted to tell my story because I was one story of millions of women's journey. And it's a really difficult journey. And when I wrote about it, I just wrote about my everyday life by, with having cancer. Like I just wrote about my everyday antics while dealing with cancer. So it was all the funny things that happened to me while I was going through it.
So, another thing that I really liked was, instead of just saying, oh, poor me, I'm going to just lie here in bed, you started blogging. And your blogs became your book. Tell us what got you, into the idea of blogging, because I did the same thing. I journaled. Yeah, I did the same thing. Tell us about that. Why?
Well, a lot of people were calling me, and I am so blessed to be part of a sorority in my college. And these girls, I mean, tens of them would call me and say, how are you doing? What's going on? And one of my friends, I can't recall which one, said to me, there's a platform called Caring Bridge where people who are struggling with an illness can get on there and you can write what's going on with you, and people can log in, like people set up a login and a password, and they can log in and check on you, and they can write you messages back. And I was not in a place mentally where I wanted to go to a support group meeting and chat about it, So I wanted to put my blinders on and just kind of deal with my situation. But when I reflect back on what I was doing, by doing the Caring Bridge website and having people chat back and forth with me, that was my therapy. To have my friends. I mean, one of my friends wrote some really snarky stuff in there. I put it in the book and I thought, oh my God, my dad's going to read this book. I really wanted to be me still and write what I was feeling and going through, and not be inundated with a lot of people, calling me and how are you doing and having sympathy. I didn't want to have this be like the plight of sympathy, because it's the last thing, I always tell the family members of cancer patients, we don't want to talk about it all the time. We want and people would say, well, I feel so silly coming over and telling you about how, my kid missed the bus or whatever happened. I want to hear the stupid things going on in your life because I don't want to talk about mine. So that was my way of kind of letting people know what was going on with me, you know, with my snarky sense of humor, with all the stupid things that happened. And then they would write me back, and that was our way of communicating. And then when I got well, and I wrote a lot of things in this book. One of my friends said to me when I was well, because I stopped writing, she said, you know what, Connie, I really think a lot of people would benefit from you putting this into a book, because you really you're very raw about your journey.
Yes, she is.
It is like brass down to nothing, you know, it's down to nothing. And he said, you would help people. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to write something. So what I did is I told my kids were what? Maybe 10 and 11 when I was writing. And I said, listen to me. If you are not bleeding to death or dying, don't bother me, because I'm going in my room and locking myself in my room, and I'm writing for an hour. And then I would have like these moments where I would just like write and write and write, you know, as a writer, like it just like kind of spills out of you. So the majority of my book I wrote on vacation in Florida. But what I did was I wrote really what was in my head at the time of those journal entries. Because the journal entries show my Pollyanna side and like how I make fun of things and, you know, just silliness, right? And then that's how my friends know me. But the real raw thoughts I had about, you know, how sad it was for me to lose my hair, which in retrospect was so stupid. But, you know,
it hurts.
But it hurts. Like it's just, I remember like sitting in the shower crying, thinking, oh my God, the last hair is going down the drain right now. And I would think all of that. And then I would write about how I had a Dyson vacuum cleaner and how I couldn't get the hair off my head. It was like, I call it like a cow with psoriasis. Like my hair was just like, it was like shaven clumps everywhere. So I got my Dyson vacuum cleaner out in an attachment and tried to vacuum my head. And like I had a clear hose. My scalp is like up in the hose. And I thought about that. But in the same time, I write in the back of the book, you know, in that part of the book, the backstory of how I was really struggling with losing my hair. But I laughed about it on the outside, but there was just such a sadness for me with that, you know, and sadness about the fact that, you know, my mom didn't make it and I've made it. Like I struggled with that too. So there's a lot of things I talk about in my book. But the greatest gift I've gotten from having written this is so many people, and people who don't have cancer, nothing to do with cancer, call me and say, you know, it was a funny read. I'm really glad. Like I read it on the beach. It was awesome. And then the greatest part, though, is when people say to me, you know, I have this book and I bring it with me to when I have chemo. And I had a woman who had a reoccurrence who read it before, you know, when she was first diagnosed, had a reoccurrence a couple of years ago. And she called me. She goes, I got your book and I'm reading it. It's like my manual. You know, I read a few pages while I'm in the oncology office, while I'm getting my chemo. So it's been a little bit of therapy for people. And a lot of spouses have called me or messaged me and said, you know, now I know what my wife is going through. And not to negate the fact that this also happens to men, but men don't have the same, you know, scenario, maybe worry of losing hair. Cause I mean, guys can be bald. I mean, I think there's a different set of circumstances for men.
It's sexy for men.
Yeah, right. Not so sexy for us. Not so sexy for us. Like I wrote about a lot of silly things. Like I remember going to Fridays one day with my kids, and obviously my kids were little, and I had a friend with me and her daughter, and my wig. Did you have chemo or no?
Yes, I did. I lost my hair twice.
Well, do you remember how hot your head is under
yes.
the head? Like after you're like, oh my God. So I went to take my wig off my head and stick it on the thing like you put a hat in, and my son goes, whoa, what are you doing? And I thought, oh my goodness, I was going to take my wig off in a restaurant. You know,
a little bit of chemo brain there?
Oh, yeah. You know,
forgot where you were.
I can still use chemo brain as an excuse for some things, right?
Yeah. Anytime I would lose something in the house, I'd go look in the refrigerator. That's where the Windex, the rolls of toilet paper would be. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. Oh my gosh. So Connie, do you have your book with you? Because I just love the cover of your book. Hold it up so we can see it. How Connie Got Her Rack Back. And it is on Amazon. So Connie, you are more than just an author. You're also a speaker, and you're the president of Get Your Rack Back Inc. Tell us about that.
Well, one of my friends when I was in high school had meals delivered to me after I had chemo. And it was such a meaningful thing for me. You know, I had 2 small kids, and it meant
And you weren't married, right?
No, I was recently
single.
divorced. I was recently divorced, and thank God. I'll just say that.
That's another book.
That's a whole nother book. But it was great. Like, he would have this food delivered, and initially they came to my door. I said, you know, I didn't order any food, and they said, "Are you Connie Bramer?" I said, "Yes," and they said, "This is for you." So it wasn't something that meant so much to my friend, you know, because he goes, "Connie, really, it was like $25, relax." But to me, it was a huge deal because it was a night I didn't have to cook, and my kids were 7 and 8. So for me, like, we ate, those poor kids, they ate a ton of Stouffer's mac and cheese because that was the only thing that I could eat in my like, it's the only thing I could tolerate stomach wise with all my chemo and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had a refrigerator. I mean, Kat, I'm telling you, like 40 of those in my freezer, and it was ridiculous. So it was like, time for mac and cheese, you know. So I felt bad, but I just didn't want, or they ate cereal, you know. And one morning when I got up and was pouring their cereal for them, I put orange juice in the Cocoa Krispies because I just like, oh, I need to go back to bed. But anyway, I thought about it, and when I was in the chemo chair one day, and I was, you know, completely bald and wearing my little pink cap, and I'm thinking to myself, there has to be a way when I'm well to pay this forward in some way and to help people who are in my circumstance. So I find that a lot of patients feel that way. It's not just me, that we want to give back.
You want to give back, yeah.
So I got thinking about it, and after I wrote my book, I wanted to have a book launch party to thank all my friends and family for supporting me. And I turned it into a fundraiser because I am in business, in my job, I'm in business. So I hit a whole bunch of people up I knew, and I said, "Hey, you want to give a couple things for a silent auction?" They're like, "We're in." So we raised $4,600 the first year, and I gave that to the American Cancer Society, Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. Mm-hmm. And I did that again the following year, and we funded, I think, 4 weeks of research with one of the galas I had, and then we gave it to another organization. And then finally in 2015, I said, you know what? I want to know, and not specifically know personally, but I want to know that the people we are helping are people who are local. You know, because if I give donations somewhere else and it's not to discount them in any way, I don't really know where it's going. I want the money. If someone gives me money in Albany, New York, where I, you know, near where I live, that a patient in Albany, New York is going to receive those funds to help them. So I founded Get Your Rack Back in 2015 to provide cancer patients with kind of bridging the gap between, you know, them having to figure out how to pay for treatment and paying for groceries. Because so many patients right now are seriously having to choose between putting food on the table for their families and paying for their treatment. You know, and I don't know if did you ever have to have the shot Neulasta?
Oh, yes. I gave it to myself.
What?
Because I would not drive all the way back into Boston. I said, look, yeah, I can do this. And I almost passed out the first time, so I had my dad do it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I've been there, done that.
Yeah. Well, that shot, I mean, you can tell me this is true. It makes you feel like you were run over by a truck and peed on by a bunch of cats, right? I mean,
yes, yeah, it does. And the truck ran over your hips.
Exactly. All your bones.
All your bones.
That shot, when I had it in 2009, was $7,500. I had that after every chemo. Do you know that same shot now is $12,000 plus administering it? Yeah. So there are patients that we help who have a 20% coinsurance. So not only are you getting chemo, but like the shot, I mean, wouldn't you think that shot would be mass produced at this point and you wouldn't be paying more?
It makes no sense. It was 7,000 too. Yeah.
Makes no sense to me. But anyway, those are the decisions that people are having to make. So I thought, you know what? I want to do something that helps people with today things, because I know that solving the cancer issue I'm not going to come up with the money to do that. I'm just not. So if I can do something that helps people, or my organization can do something that helps people with putting groceries on the table or paying for gas for them to get to Sloan or Dana-Farber or wherever they're going, and pay maybe an electric bill. We just paid for a hotel stay for a patient who needs to be closer to the hospital. Those kinds of things that are like everyday needs we want to pay for.
Those are so wonderful, and people need them so badly. And it's so great that you put this together, Get Your Rack Back Inc., for anybody listening. So, Connie, how can we find you? How can the audience find you?
On gyrb.org.
gyrb.org.
And we help all cancer patients, not just breast cancer. It's men, women, and children with all types of cancers that we help. We were actually kind of rebranded to be GYRB, so people didn't just mistake us for always helping, breast cancer.
And that's Get Your Rack Back.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Connie, for being with us. And, I've started another radio show on Dream Visions 7. I hope you will come on there, and we will talk about the dream you had where you dreamed the color of your child's eyes. Oh, so yes, we have to have you back on there. So thank you, everybody, for being on the show with us tonight, and a special shout out to Rachel for making all of this possible, who was our producer. And join us again next Tuesday, same time, same place, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern Standard Time for the Kat Kanavos Show. Until then, remember, everybody dreams, but some dreams save lives. Good night, everyone.